Change of scenery today.
Yeah.
How's this week been?
Would be better if we'd have won last weekend. So but at the same time, as I've said numerous occasions, you have to get on with it. You have to shake that disappointment off, and that's naturally easier the longer the week goes. And I would imagine for fans when they're at the game and they'll be disappointed and they travel back, and eventually you get it out of your system, some sooner than others. But training wise, all good. A little bit windswept today, but probably needed that after the rain that was here yesterday. So yeah, preparations all in all ready for Rotherham.
You speak about learning lessons, from last weekend. What have you been kind of working on in that regard?
I think we just spoke about positives, as in I think the majority of people would accept that we played well first half in particular, and even second half. Watching it back, I thought we had a bit more play than maybe I perhaps had in my head straight after the game, because likewise I'm probably dealing with that disappointment as well. And then you're talking about moments and decisions, and the problem is we've spoke about that quite a bit. But was everything wrong? I think far from it. If we were playing and say we got beat and we come off and said, well, we didn't look organised, we were getting overrun, constantly, or certain parts of the pitch just weren't working, but that really wasn't the case. And I think that would also apply to the game before against Charlton. So there definitely are some positives to take, but as we keep again discussing, and we know how it works, it's about getting those results. And a lot of people can then be very dismissive of what's achieved a result, particularly if it's positive. They just see that, oh, we've won, brilliant, smile on your face, crack on. It doesn't mean you can have a worse performance in reality. So we're just trying to take the positives and, like I said, get ready for this game.
Have you considered or thought about maybe changes to your own system or formation?
Yeah, certainly that's been very sort of active, I guess, in my mind, looking at this situation overall, and I'm not going to give too much away to where I guess my head's ended up at. But I think it would be foolish not to give that consideration. But like I said, I think there's some good things. Sometimes you might just feel a change just to see. But yeah, I don't want to say too much, because I don't want to, give Rotherham a heads up before we get the team sheets tomorrow.
I know you won't obviously say too much, but we speak a lot about the defence. Would that be perhaps maybe a change to maybe a back five?
Yeah, that's again. I think if we were changing formation, I think that's probably the more obvious change that you consider. Having more numbers there, I think, will give people it's an easy thing to look at. And I'm not saying it can't be right, but it doesn't mean everything will be right either just by getting another defender on there, because you kind of just described it as a 5. Now a lot of people would say a 3. It can all look very different, and there's different ways again of playing with a back 3/5. You can have it as it very quickly turns into a back 4 again. So it's something that if I ask the players to do that, we've got to be comfortable with. We've got players that have played it, and last season towards the end, we adopted a back 3/5 in some of those games when we ended up with some good results. If I feel it's the right thing to do, then it's certainly something that we'll look at.
And I guess injury dependent as well with potentially centre halves, and brings me on to the questions about the injuries. Yeah. We'll start with Josh Feeney, who's obviously one of those centre halves. How's he?
Yeah, better in general. I think not only him, there's him, sort of Toto, Tommy to a degree, have all kind of been not training this week up until right at the sort of end of it. I think the game will come too quick for a couple of those lads, certainly. So some decisions are easy, others a little bit more difficult, but we have been missing a couple of lads from training, like I said, for the majority of the week.
You spoke about Tommy, and was it soreness? He was more
his groin.
It how is he? Was that like an injury, or is it more like a soreness kind of?
I think there's definitely something there, don't get me wrong, but I think it's just took, sometimes you just need a little bit of rest and to be off feet to allow that to sort of heal. Like I said, I think he's felt it still a tiny bit, but I think overall ourselves and his parent club have both got the same opinion of it, and it's nothing that should keep him out for any length of time, and we'll come through it, so that's positive. I don't think Tommy wants to certainly be injured and be doing his work in the gym, much rather be out on the pitch, showcasing his talent.
How many of those three will we expect to potentially see tomorrow?
Like I said, I think potentially one. I don't see anything better than that, and I think we have to sort of wait up and probably how they are, take some advice with the medical team of who it would be fair to put out there and who we would class still as being unavailable.
Is it different as well when you've got two that are from loan clubs, because there's another person you have to speak to? I suppose they have a vested interest in their player as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think because it's the locality of it, it makes it easy for the lads to, they've still gone in there and maybe done some of the recovery after they've been with us. So it's not taking over from anything like that. As you can imagine, they've got a little bit more resources than ourselves to just give them the best chance of being fit and ready, and some of that is even when they are fit and training. It's just helping with recovery, but in fairness, Villa have let us just crack on. The thing that they want, and which is understandable, is just communication, and that's been occurring. So as right from the off, we're grateful for them letting the players come to us, and then hopefully at the end of the loans they'll be of an opinion where they'd be more than happy to send players to us again. That's the aim. I think we can also obviously provide a big benefit for those players, for them individually and for their parent club, that they see them develop and gain experience and ultimately improve.
You spoke about Leo Castledine and Charles Sago Jr. not potentially being ready for a full 90 minutes. How far away would you say they are off from that?
I think I watch a lot of these young players, and even watching 21's games, it's surprising how often a lot of the games you watch start off at a really good tempo, and then towards the end of the game that just naturally drops. So we'll see. Look, some games might be different than others. We have the thing with in-play minutes in games, and I think the biggest was it last year, I think, at my previous club, the biggest discrepancy was 20 minutes of the ball being, and that's like obviously a big difference. You can imagine how far you can sort of run around in 20 minutes. So it all depends how the game's going, really, and potentially them getting more used to it. Maybe next week, for instance, we play Saturday, so that's more demand on players. A bit of fatigue could come in to that. So we'll see, realistically. And I take your point. I know what I kind of said, but it will be dependent. I think these young players, they just near enough all have it's a bit of an eye opener for them in terms of the intensity. And if you think about sort of style of play at 21s and often at Premier League, it can be a lot slower at points where they get more rest, where I think a lot of League One games are just more continuous sort of running and efforts. The Premier League is probably a lot more dynamic, and just that when they up the tempo, like we saw when Leicester were here at the start of the game, they had a couple of moves and it went from almost walking pace to all of a sudden they're almost running through on goal. So it's just a little bit different.
Got Rotherham this Saturday. How are you looking at going into that one?
We want to win the game. you know, against a team that haven't probably, or aren't in the position in the league table that they would hope for, but very early days, and I'm sure that the ambition there hasn't changed. One of the teams that are, you know, be favoured to get promoted with the history, you know, having come down from the Championship, and recent times they've done very well at getting back. That was obviously quite often under Paul Warne, who did a great job there, but they've also brought someone back to the club in Steve, that's had success there and is used to having his teams fighting for promotion, so I don't think anything changes there. As I said, yes, they might not have quite had the results that would put them further up the table, but squad-wise, you know, individual players, the firepower that they've got, you know, often they've maybe had Ugal on the bench, or Clark Harris, Nombe, like there's some serious firepower there that we're going to have to be aware of. And I think some of the stats we've looked at, again, the bottom line is the result at the end of it, but behind that there are some stats that you look at and think if that carries on, you know, that will, their fortunes will change. So we're very conscious of what they'll bring and the threat that they have, but as I said, we want to try and win the game.
Thank you very much.